Have you ever worked diligently, poured your effort into creating something valuable, and then felt like the compensation you received didn't quite reflected the true worth of your contribution? This feeling, this intuition that something isn't quite right, is at the heart of one of Karl Marx's most powerful economic concepts. Surplus value is the central pillar of Karl Marx's critique of capitalism because it explains the mechanism of exploitation. It represents the difference between the value a worker creates through their labor and the wages they receive. Marx argued that this unpaid labor is the source of all capitalist profit, demonstrating capitalism's inherent tendency towards inequality. To grasp this fully, we need to understand Marx's labor theory of value. He contended that the true value of any commodity is determined by the amount of socially necessary labor time required to produce it. Workers, according to Marx, sell their labor power, not their labor. Labor power is their capacity to work, and like any other commodity, its value is determined by the labor time necessary to reproduce it, primarily the cost of the worker's subsistence, such as food, shelter, and clothing. However, a worker can typically produce value equivalent to their subsistence in only a portion of the workday. The remaining hours of work generate additional value, which the capitalist appropriates without compensation. This discrepancy between the value created and the wages paid is precisely the surplus value. Understanding surplus value allows us to critically analyze economic relationships beyond superficial appearances. Instead of seeing wages as a fair exchange for the total value produced, it reveals them as payment for only a fraction of that value. This perspective encourages us to question how wealth is generated, distributed, and accumulated within capitalist systems, highlighting the structural power imbalance between capital owners and laborers. It shifts the focus from individual negotiation to systemic exploitation embedded in the production process. Marx further categorized the components of capital involved in production into two types: constant capital and variable capital. Constant capital refers to the means of production, like machinery, raw materials, and buildings, which transfer their value to the product without creating new value. Variable capital, on the other hand, is the money spent on wages, which, uniquely, creates new value, including the surplus. This distinction was crucial for Marx in isolating labor as the sole source of new value and thus, of surplus. Ultimately, recognizing surplus value provides a fundamental lens for understanding the dynamics of class struggle and the inherent contradictions of capitalism. It explains why profits are possible, how exploitation is sustained, and why the interests of the capitalist class and the working class are fundamentally opposed. This concept is not merely an economic theory. It is a profound sociological insight into the structure of society itself, showing how economic relations shape power and inequality.